Live from the Talking Joe studios,
it's Talking Joe with Chief and Chris. Hey, it's me, the Chief. I'm joined by my buddy
Diagnostic 80, aka Chris McLeod, or the other way around, from the Full Force podcast, and of course now Talking Joe. I should just say from Talking Joe now, shouldn't I?
Well, you're part of the furniture now.
Awesome, man. How you doing?
Pretty rough, as you can probably tell from my voice. I have the lurgy.
You have the Barry White syndrome.
I love Barry White. I'm going to put some Barry White on after this show. I love a bit of Barry White. His band was called... Well, he was billed as Barry White with Love Unlimited and the Love Unlimited Orchestra.
Not Too Unlimited. Don't get confused with Too Unlimited.
But he had two lots of Love Unlimited. So he just loved a bit of Love Unlimited.
Oh, he loved it, didn't he? He loves it. He loved it, doesn't he?
The Walrus of Love, which is what they call me. No, they don't call me that. I wish they did. But yeah, so this kind of came on a couple of days ago. And I worked from home yesterday for fear of spreading around the office and also just feeling rubbish. And then I decided, woke up this morning, actually I'm feeling okay, I feel a bit better. Got into the office, and within about an hour of being there, I was like, this was a bad decision.
Bloody AIDS, eh?
But I stuck it out, because that's a trooper that I am. And apologies if I do too much coughing and Chris can't catch them all to edit. It's like Pokemon, you've got to catch them all.
I'll be catching them all, mate. I cut everything out.
Okay. Even the good stuff.
Even the vocals,
yeah. Yeah. It's all good stuff. What are you talking about? Yeah, so apart from that, not been up to much really. I'll tell that's a complete lie. I watched Avengers Endgame.
Do you like it? Do you enjoy it?
I'm a big comic fan. I am not as big a fan of the Marvel movies. I think they're good, but I'm not as deep into them as some people are. I rewatched what was the one before? Infinity War.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I rewatched that like a week before, just to get the juices flowing, get back in the thing. And it's okay. It was all right. I thought it was a Joe average movie. I didn't get what everyone was getting so hyped up about, and so Endgame kind of had not much expectation from me going in, and I'd probably come out saying it's probably one of the top 3 Marvel movies I've seen.
Oh, nice.
It's really, really surprised me. I thought there were, loads of Easter eggs, which only sort of, some of the hardcore fans would have spotted, which I liked. I thought the storytelling and script felt a little bit different. It didn't feel fully like the previous Marvel movies I'd experienced. I don't know what it was, they're quite sort of generic in their structure of beginning, middle act and end. They kind of all follow the same pattern. This was something, so I can't put my finger on it, but something was slightly different. I really enjoyed it. There was only a couple of missteps for the Chief, and I will call them out, and that was have you seen it?
Yeah.
It was the Hawkeye and Scarlet, and not Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow.
Yeah.
Hawkeye and Black Widow fight to see who would get to sacrifice themselves. I thought was awful. I thought it was really cheesy and hackneyed and just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I thought the bit where... Now, they've done really well, Marvel movies, and they've had strong female leads and, empowerment of these female superheroes, and I'm all for that, big fan of that, but I think they massively over-egged the pudding when Captain Marvel, near the end, has got the gauntlet, and then she's suddenly flanked by every single other female character from all the movies combined.
Yeah.
And that was her, guard of honour to get her through. I think they over-egged it a little bit there. And that relay tag team race to get the gauntlet from one end of the battlefield to the other, from one superhero to another, I thought was pretty poor. And there was one other bit which I didn't like, and the bit where Tony's dead and his funeral.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler, tough. You haven't seen it, tough. There you go, catch that one.
I'm not staying in.
And at his funeral, it's just kind of a slow pan shot of all these people just kind of lined up, just to, I don't know, it just felt overly cheesy. But that aside, I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah. I can feel very similar for what you just said there. The only thing I would say with the female aspect, it has been noted that they did that on purpose to the point of it being a point rather than people I think Feige even knew that it was on the nose, but he did it literally on purpose, knowing fully well what the reaction was going to be for it. So I'm all for that. The other kind of things as well, I do agree with the... In actual fact, funnily enough, I had to step out for a wee during the Black Widow Hawkeye fight. So at the point I came back was just as they're starting to kind of like trying to like beat the other one to the edge kind of thing. And so I caught that just as it was happening. So I missed the kind of build up to that little element. But yeah, I know what you mean. It did feel a little bit... I mean, they had to make it quite... I understand why it happened, because they had to make it very personable for both characters, and I think that's the only way it could have been done. Obviously, they could have made it less ridiculous in the way that they both go at jumping over the edge. But yeah, it could have... we didn't have to have it like stretched out to the point where, you know, he's literally holding her at the end, and it's just like, well... That could have been done with just one jump over the edge. Do you know what I mean? It didn't need like the 50 different like attempts to try and do it. Yeah. But no, I agree with you. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. Brilliant. One of the really cool kind of little Easter eggs that I really enjoyed was when Cap has gone. Cap's gone back in time, whatever, and then he's confronted with another version of himself. Yeah, which I thought was quite a cool little moment. And that wasn't an Easter egg, but the Easter egg bit was when he then gets in a lift, which is kind of the scene from Winter Soldier. Oh my God, that's brilliant. But also the bit where they're about to throw down, then he says, "Hail Hydra." Yeah, and I was like, oh. And that is a reference to a comic book called Secret Empire, which came out last year, I think, where... It caused all sorts of a kerfuffle. Yeah, I haven't read it because I'm not a massive Captain America fan. Yeah. I've read some really good runs, like the original Mark Waid run from back in the 90s I really liked, and some of the Ed Brubaker stuff I liked, but I haven't read a good run I liked for a long time. Yeah, that Secret Empire, that was where, and you probably know more details than me, where they had effectively suggested that Captain America was a Hydra agent from the very beginning. Yeah. And he's only now sort of coming out of deep cover. And it caused, like you say, massive controversy or controversy, and I don't know what the I don't know what the conclusion was. Was he a clone, or was he an alternate captain from another universe? I'm not sure. Actually, I'm gonna do some research on that one, because I haven't read that comic, and also it made such a furore. But then at the same time, these things are always done in comics for that isn't the reveal. Like, if they're giving that away in like news forums and making that a big point, that's not the reveal. The reveal is going to be later on in the comic, when it turns out he's not a friggin', or he's even more undercover than that. So, like, you know, people jump to these conclusions not knowing the history behind every single story ever made. It's ridiculous. Like, when people go nuts over what Captain Marvel's costume looked like when we first saw pictures from the set, it's like... What do you expect? Like, of course it's going to be that, and then it's going to become like the classic costume you know and love. Like, I don't understand why people go nuts about this stuff from the beginning, knowing fully well all that they're doing it on purpose. This is all done on purpose to get you guys like all up in a tizzy, and everyone no one realizes it. It just goes straight over their heads, and they're just like, I don't know, too many sheep. Yeah, the world is now just one big ball of PR and marketing, and pretty much everything you see in any form of media is done to create a reaction from you, the consumer. Even this show. Even this show. You think you like it, but it's actually a load of old garbage. It's a deep cover for... We're going to come out and be like Hail Hydra at the end. Exactly. Anyway. Yep, so that was my... what about you? What have you been up to? We've indulged me quite a bit there. And we've done our review on Endgame. I've been super busy, and I'm continuing to be super busy because we've got Joe Fest. We're driving up tomorrow. It's a 10-hour drive. We'll have to go early, and which means I'm running out of hours in this particular day. I'm still working on my Lightfoot Night Force cosplay, which at this stage now I'm just down to painting the backpack and a few other little details. So I'm very, very excited to see how that turns out. Yes. On top of that, it's just been like, I mean, I've had a lot of work on, which is great. A lot of freelance work, video stuff for a Kickstarter that's just gone up, Action Force Kickstarter by Bobby Valor. I did his Kickstarter video for that, so check that out. We just did a reveal today of the exclusive figure as well, so that's also quite... I mean, not yesterday, I should say, because this is going out tomorrow. And also, Boss Fight, I've just started work with them on their YouTube channel, so that's something I can reveal now. So I've just had to churn a video out for them for something that's coming on Friday. That's all I can say on that one. So that YouTube channel's up and running. I've got that going. I've got this podcast that I'm recording and editing. Yeah. I've got the Full Force News Burst, which I just got up last night. I wanted to get it out the way for this so we could focus on this, but I've also got another episode that's got to go up soon as well. So I'm kind of doing 3 different editing jobs. And I've just been... well, not approached, but I've just been propositioned with more contractual work. So it's like, oh my goodness. And then obviously Joe Fest goes till Wednesday. On top of that, I'm working on the Hoarder app, which HOARDAR, Hoarder, which is a social network for collectors. We've been in the beta phase for quite a while now, probably, year and a half coming up to, and we're desperately working on the app to get it ready. It won't be ready this weekend, but it will hopefully be ready very soon afterwards. We've got a few more bugs to iron out, and then the app should launch very soon, and it's looking unbelievably good. So I'm ridiculously busy. That's what I've been up to in a week, believe it or not, and it just keeps coming. Like, it's non-stop. It's get up in the morning, work until really, really late, and then have a couple of hours of sleep, and then repeat the process. So, nice. That's me.
He's just a working man, working hard with his hands.
Working 9 to 5, or it should be working 6 till 5.
Yeah. My reference was a deep cut Dusty Rhodes. Yours was a Dolly Parton.
I know mine was up there. Mine was like commercial.
I'll leave the listeners to decide which one was the best.
Okay, I'll play both versions. So.
Unfortunately, I say unfortunately every week because no one really wants to go there, but we do have to go
inside Chief's mind.
I tell you what's really been getting me this week.
What's been grinding your gears?
Grinding my gears, getting my goat, the monkey in the wrench, all that kind of jazz. People who over the top sniff.
Right, yeah.
Everyone does a little... when they got a bit of a cold, whatever. But not. I'm on the train with people who are literally,
like,
oh my god, they're like sniffing up all that snot and all that junk back up into the. And I just feel like I need to carry a box of tissues around with me and just hand them out and say, look, do you want a tissue?
Yeah, just blow your nose. Like, I'd rather hear you blow your nose than and it's worse when you hear the old, the kind of sound as well when they're about to spit it out onto the floor, and you're just like, oh my god, this is public. Like, have some decorum, you disgusting human being.
Sniffers. Just don't, I don't mind a tiny little sniff.
We've all been...
the radar.
Yeah. And we've all been caught out, haven't we? We've all been in a situation where we've been like, we've all of a sudden we're like sniffling for some reason, and you don't have anything at hand. But if you're on a train, you've got a toilet with a tissue dispenser in it, or a toilet roll.
I have no pride. I don't care. Basically, I have blown my nose on a
child's head.
Lots of dreadlocks are no good for that. So nice kind of solid matted hair is good for that. No, I wear glasses, and in my back pocket I carry one of those little small squares, like a glass cleaner. So I blow my nose in that. Do not wipe your glasses with it after blowing your nose. I've actually been known to
green lenses.
Blow my nose on the bottom of my t-shirt.
Classic.
It's going in the wash. What's the problem?
Yeah.
I have blown my nose on a piece of A4 paper. That is just when when there's a lot needs to. It's not good. It's not ideal. But then you can just crumple it up and
burn
it in the bin. Burn it. But there's lots of ways out. There's lots of, unless you're butt naked,
which happens a lot to me in public.
Exactly. So you're in trouble. But the rest of us, I think we can find something to wipe our noses with. But yeah, sniffers, sort your game out, man.
Yeah, cool. I was going to do some sort of like musical end piece to that, but no, I'm not going to bother.
Okay. Right, we've been chit-chatting too long without talking about any G.I. Joe comics.
Yeah, no, let's get into this. Cheers.
Let's get into this G.I. Joes. So, if you will recall last week, we both dropped the ball by not completing the special missions. We say dropped the ball, but in fact we left you on a cliffhanger. Even better. So we will start off today by finishing off the Special Missions two-parter by reviewing Special Missions 15, and this one is the continuation of the two-parter where the Joes are in. Is it the Himalaya?
Chomolungma.
Chomolungma, yes, and there's a CIA agent which they think they've gone to extract. They're accompanied by Anderson, not the rogue CIA agent. He's attached to the Joe mission. He actually wants to off the renegade
Esterhazy.
Yeah, Esterhazy, the renegade rogue CIA dude. And they've met Colonel Peng, or General Peng, whatever. Colonel, General, whatever. And he is part of some protectorate, and they are after just the hidden city in the valley of the Shadow of Death. No, in some sort of valley, the hidden valley. And it's a firefight, and all hell's breaking loose, basically.
So when we last saw them, they were around a fire, and they were chatting away with Esterhazy. And it all kind of went a bit south because Esterhazy kind of revealed that he knew Anderson was out to kill him. So all the guns start to point towards the Joes and everything. They're all kind of in a standoff, and that's where we join this new issue. Let's talk about the cover, I think, right? First, pretty beautiful one of Snake Eyes scaling a wall with his hand on another grappling hook. Now, in the actual comic itself, that this particular scene is kind of taking from, he isn't scaling the wall at this point. He hasn't even started. He's at the bottom of this wall, and he just throws the grappling hook and takes out the guy who's about to shoot at them, which is brilliant. And he's also wearing a winter jacket. But again, I think on the cover, it's a beautiful cover. But I think that they're doing that just because they want people to recognise that it's Snake Eyes.
Yeah, this is a Ron Wagner cover, and interior is the same crew as the previous part. Larry Harmer scripting, Herb Trimpe pencils, Andy Mazinski inks, Phil Felix on letters, and Neil Yomtov on colours. But and there's a bright shining sun, or I
moon, I'd imagine.
The moon,
yeah,
meant to be the moon. But yeah, how do you feel? I thought this issue.
I thought it was better than the first parter.
I thought it was better than the first parter because it felt a little bit more. I don't want to say not as complex, but it felt a little bit more. The storytelling flowed better.
Yeah, more cohesive, definitely.
Bit more linear, a bit more cohesive. It's effectively just kind of more action and escape kind of stuff.
Yeah, so Peng and the Chinese are attacking the monastery in order to kind of flush out, the Esterhazy and the other guys, and they see that they're attacking the monastery, and they kind of have to help. The monastery is taken over by Peng and his goons. And then what we have then is the Joes and Esterhazy trying to work out how they're going to attack with a small force. So they decide stealth is the way to do it. And there's this amazing kind of because obviously the monastery is right up against this sheer mountain face. Yep. It's left up to Iceberg and Snake Eyes, who have to rappel up there. And there's even talk of who's the best mountain climber in G.I. Joe, and it's Alpine is usually, but Iceberg's not far behind, kind of thing.
Yeah. Is it Larry being very clever in that the directive was get Iceberg in the comic, when Larry probably was thinking, well, Alpine would have been better suited to this mission.
Yeah.
Because one of them says, this soldier you call Iceberg, he is an expert climber? And Scarlett says, not really. Alpine is the world-class mountain climber on the team, but he's not here, almost as if I wasn't allowed to use him.
Yeah,
Iceberg has one main thing going for him. He's a Joe.
Yeah. And also, it's funny how they just no one worries about Snake Eyes ever with anything. It's just he can do anything. The guy is just the perfect soldier. So it's all the talk and the worry and the concern is on Iceberg. And even Iceberg, when he's climbing it, is constantly going, oh my God. And then when he gets to the top, he's like, Alpine's never going to believe this. He's really happy that he's made it. And Snake Eyes didn't even break a sweat. He's just he's done it, It's brilliant. But I love that sequence of them climbing. It's really, really fun. It's really cool. And having to, all the different techniques they're having to employ to get up this really difficult face of the mountain. It's great.
Yep. And then they're actually going to rescue the abbot, aren't they? Who's been taken captive, and they kind of the bad guys kind of say, look, he's at the end of a corridor with a locked door, and there's 2 guards, and no one will be able to sneak past him. They obviously set up the escape route, that's the breakout which is coming, and. No, I mean it's all good stuff. It's all fast flowing action. Snake Eyes gets down, I'm looking at the sound effects. It's a zick-zack is the 2 sword strokes that dispatch the 2 guards.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I've ever seen a zigzag before, but I like it.
It's a beautiful sound.
Yeah.
And obviously they start their escape as well, don't they, in that sense?
Yeah. And the bad guys, quite often in comics and other media, they're just kind of portrayed as immoral, kind of out for themselves, up to no good, sort of dirty rat kind of things. But here, one of the good guys chucks a grenade, and one of the lieutenants or whatever,
Sergeant Wu,
Sergeant, lieutenant's all the same. He basically chucks himself on the grenade to sacrifice himself for the colonel, which was, I thought a nice touch.
Yeah.
Not that he died, but just showing that the other side, maybe there is no right and wrong. It's just everyone's. Try and do what they believe is the right thing.
Yeah. No, it's true. And then obviously, the colonel's very moved by the sacrifice as well. It's not like he's just like, oh, great, I'll need to get a new one. It's like, he's straight away, your sacrifice will not be in vain. So yeah, totally.
The only thing that didn't really ring true, perhaps, was throughout the issue, Agent Anderson has been outed as what his mission was to make sure that Esterhazy doesn't come back alive. And right at the very end,
there's a kind of redeeming thing here.
On the last page, he decides all the Joes are out. He decides to stay, and it's almost like it's come full circle. Esterhazy's gone, but Anderson has kind of done what Esterhazy did back in the day: come to this small province or area and end up staying. And now Anderson is kind of assuming that role that Esterhazy did.
Yeah, I mean it's a weird 180, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't I'm not. Oh, this is absolute garbage. This is rubbish. I don't think it's that, but it felt a little bit contrived.
There could have been some more lead up to that, because he's been the whole time he's been this D-bag. And then all of a sudden, like right at this one panel, it's like, I'm changing my ways and all that kind of stuff. It's like, wow. And I suppose, Esterhazy sacrifices himself by staying behind and letting the guys get away so he can kind of slow the Chinese down. And unfortunately, we're led to believe dies. Led to believe.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. And then, of course, like you say, we get the kind of end part with Anderson. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a bit of a 180 and a little bit unnatural feeling. Yes.
So let's Yo-Joe this 2-parter.
Yep.
I don't know. I think the second part was definitely better than the first part, but I didn't necessarily feel that it was an essential G.I. Joe story overall. It's like, am I ever going to reread this one? I mean, I probably will, because I'll probably reread every G.I. Joe story, but it's not one that I'm definitely going to go, oh, I must go and read that Special Missions 2-parter.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I'm probably going to give it a 6.
I'm going to go 7, but only because it's much better than the first part. The first issue I felt was so light on the actual G.I. Joe characters that there were so many other things going on. This is kind of a similar thing, but you get way more G.I. Joe characters doing what they do best. Iceberg turns out, to be a really, important part of the machine. Snake Eyes obviously doing what he does best. Scarlet is really, much bigger part in this issue. And Chuckles as well. In fact, Chuckles has a bit less to do in this one, but obviously he had more in the first issue. So I think that there's definitely more action. I prefer the kind of way they went about the finishing the actual issue. So I'm going to give it more. I'm going to give it a 7 on this one for me.
All right, good stuff. Next up, we have Real American Hero issue 83. Now,
Road Pig.
I know this ends on a cliffhanger, but I'm quite happy to rate this story as a single arc.
Okay, sure.
And then we can discuss afterwards whether we want to do 84 and 85, I think, as probably a 2-parter.
It's quite interesting because this issue does kind of connect, not like, it connects loosely to the previous one. So it's not a 2-parter as such, but it's definitely the repercussions of the first issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So, like you say, Road Pig, and you did actually send me a picture of that amazing Road Pig cosplay. I'll stick that up for this.
Tank D, his name is, from the finals.
Tank D, yeah.
And
a fitting
honestly,
name.
Definitely, I think, because obviously there are amazing cosplays out there. But they're not necessarily. They don't. It's not always. You're not looking at the action figure necessarily. But with Road Pig, it's like the guy is the exact build. You get the idea that's what he should look like. It's just. It's exceptional.
Yeah, it's great. We'll stick it up there. So, what are you saying about? What are you saying? We'll stick it up there.
Stick it up there, mate.
And I'll put it on Twitter as well. So, what are you saying to this cover? It's a close-up of Road Pig swinging his mallet, and he's firing a crossbow bolt, which actually kindly has the property of Road Pig written on it. So, if he ever wants to get it back, people will know.
Well, that's explosive, so I doubt he'll ever get that back. But I like it. I think it's impressive cover. It's highlighting two of his accessories. 3, actually, if you count the shoulder pads.
Yep.
Yeah, a really, really solid cover.
This is covers by Ron Wagner, who's also on Interior Pencils.
Love
Larry
Ron
Harmer's on
Wagner.
script. Inks is Fred Fredericks. Colours Bob Shireen. And letters is Michael Heisler. The main kind of 2 parts of this issue are Road Pig, who is attempting a jailbreak of Zarana and Zanzibar, I think it is. Yeah. And the other part of the issue focuses on Zartan and Mindbender, who are engaging in a attack on the Pit 3, where they believe it to be in the Utah desert.
So with the Road Pig story, that's where we kind of come to, and it's in the bar. Now, I get...
let's do the Road Pig story first, then we'll do the other one.
I get so many, I would say, like, Terminator vibes in this issue. One, because when he goes into the bar, all of the locals are kind of, making fun of him, this huge, hulking, great, almost naked dude. And then obviously as we move through the issue, he breaks into a local police station, which is just like in Terminator and, in kind of very similar Terminator kind of thing. So I think that might have been on the mind with the way this story kind of was drawn and the way it was done, like almost like the Terminator sees, is looking for Sarah Connor. In this, Road Pig is looking for Zarana. And I know it's not, it's not as on the nose as that, but it just has that vibe to me,
No, I agree. And I also think Road Pig, I don't know if he was modelled on Brian Bosworth, but I've just sent you a Google link, so if you want to have a look at some images, but Brian Bosworth...
I know who Brian Bosworth is, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And, that's the first thing I kind of think of. He was a meathead coming out of college, a linebacker, kind of had that... Seattle Seahawks drafted, yeah, but he kind of had that similar haircut with kind of shaved... He had coloured lines shaved in his head, kind of like Road Pig does, obviously shoulder pad muscled, and I don't know if... Larry, it'd be interesting to ask, if he was sort of modelled on Boz or what sort of era Boz came out. But
well, that would have been designed by one of the Hasbro artists because they did the designs and Larry just bled life into them with the descriptions, like the bios and stuff. I'm not sure who designed Road Pig. It might have been Ron Rudat. It might have been someone else. I apologise for not knowing off the top of my head.
Yeah, cool. But like you say...
definite vibes, though, of Bosworth.
Definite vibes of the Boz, and like you say though, Halmer would have fleshed him out, and one of the things he has fleshed him out with is a split personality.
Donald and Road Pig,
which is really, really like it. He's the pleasant, well-spoken, upstanding Donald, and then when it's like the Hulk, don't make him mad.
It is, big time.
And suddenly Road Pig comes out and lays the smack down when required. So just to clarify on that, this is February 89.
So with this being the first appearance of Road Pig, we're kind of given a few details as to the character by the writers, in this case, in Larry, by linking him with Zarana's past. So it's like...
Yep.
He has obviously had previous with Zarana, and it turns out that she's called him all sorts of names and been very mean to him because obviously he loves her, but it's an unrequited love. Now, it's all done very subtly. It's almost like we're introduced to Road Pig, but at the same time we know everything about him. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like by knowing he's got this split personality and has this connection with Zarana, it's almost like we know this character immediately, and that is actually quite impressive after just 3 pages.
Yeah, very, very good writing, and his look and his feel, you can imagine him being a dreadnok and, having ridden with the other guys and terrorising people. And like you say, that backstory is enticing. Oh, what's the deal here with him as Arana? But like you say, very clever, and it fleshed him out. And there's, other characters in this run which have had several issues and haven't really had the time or the input to get to know their character.
Yeah.
And so that's, really nice to see, and good credit to everyone involved, because I like him straight from the off. Great character.
Oh, yeah, big time. And a great figure as well. I love that Sonic Fighters version as well, that kind of like crazy orange one. It's brilliant.
Right, yeah. And he's got beef with Zanzibar, but when he first sees him, boots him in the gut. And he's like, he's not going to rescue him, is he? He's going to leave him there. But then he has he's got access to the skiff, or he knows where it is. And so he busts out Zanzibar. There's a cool bit here. He's leaving with Zarana. He's ridden his bike into the police station, and he's about to ride out, and he's going, smell something. He's sniffing, actually, but I'll give him a pass for sniffing, because he can smell the cops. So
obviously it was a bacon smell. But just prior to that, we are given a bit more, I suppose, more info, I suppose, from the previous issue, linking it to the previous issue. When Law and Order turn up at this local police station, they want to question Zarana and Zanzibar, but the local law enforcement are kind of getting in the way and saying that we want to run these guys through our kind of authorities and stuff. We want a due process, effectively.
Yeah.
And Law basically says, well, I just want to speak to Zarana. And also it's mentioned that, I turned a blind eye when you got your guys out of here. So we're told, and we're given the information, that Mutt and the Battle Force 2000 guys are out of the prison and heading back to the pit anyway. So everything's nice and smoothed over from the end of the last issue.
Yep.
But obviously, and I don't remember seeing Zanzibar and Zarana getting captured necessarily at the end of that issue. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's obviously that is implied in this issue. So whether it wasn't shown at the end, but, they're caught, that's what we're led to believe, and that's what happens in this run. And like you say, Road Pig crashes into the police station. He immediately rescues Zarana, basically has to, because he says he smells the cops, has to release Zanzibar because he can get his air skiff started and they can escape.
Yeah, and which is effectively what they do. They escape, and like you say, Law and Order show up, but it's too late because they've busted a hole in the wall and they're off. And we will see those guys in a couple of issues' time, I think around 87 or something like that. So that kind of frees those guys from prison and introduces Road Pig. So it's a nice little sort of segment of the issue.
Yeah, totally.
And then the other half of the issue is all these Cobra helicopters flying across the ocean. Aspids, that's it. That's the kiddies. And they are going to attack the pit. And how are the Joes ever going to survive this? They've got an inside man, not really an inside man, but a man who is giving them information, and it is Captain Min. And because he has his hydrofoil, which has a Cobra radio in it still, and he has gone to a payphone on the docks and basically asked to speak to the Pentagon, and he got straight through to them and got straight through to Hawk. Well, no, I'm guessing he got through to someone, and basically they took his word as gospel, and that starts the ingenious Joe deception, if you will.
Yeah, we get Mutt and Battle Force 2000 return. Spirit gets kind of pushed off his off his seat because they're in such a rush to kind of like do what they need to do, and it's all very like the earth moving equipment comes out of the pit. All of the Joes are they've got their jobs to do in the dark in Utah to kind of do what they're going to do. We don't know what it is, but we've got an idea, and it turns out that they've just moved all of those huts over a mile away and made up a fake base. And obviously Cobra turn up. Zartan's kind of off the whole time because he thinks, one, they should have maintained radio silence. Two, they're kind of going in with, they've got the intel, but it's not 100%. And he's like still kind of like, he's worried that the Star Viper that infiltrated was also kind of picked off. So at the same time, he's not 100% sure about the whole plan. And when they get there, they bomb the crap out of what they think is the pit. It turns out not to be, and Zartan kind of, says, well, I'm fed up of this, let's go. And the Joe's escape, thanks to Captain Mean, which I think is really a nice little way for him to repay Lieutenant Falcon and the recon team.
Yep. No, some nice panels during that assault. However, I really like the art in this issue, but I'm not sure Fred Fredericks is the best inker for Ron Wagner, because he's using quite a light line for his inks, and I quite like the scratchiness of it, but I do like a bit of a thicker inking line, just to give it a bit more definition. But there's some nice scenes here on page 24 where they bombed it, and there's a Televiper who's got looks like a metal detector out. And there's a cool panel of Zartan poking Mindbender in the chest.
Yeah.
If you ever raise your voice to me again, I'll pull your tongue out through your left nostril.
That Techno Viper going like "sure" as well. It's quite funny.
Yeah. I really like that stuff. So yeah, and then like you say, Hawk pops his head out of a trapdoor, and they've moved these Quonset huts a mile across the desert, and everything's free and clear. And I guess that's a way of wrapping up the Star Viper having found, like you say, having found out where the Joe base is. It wouldn't have sat well if Cobra had have just not done anything about that.
Totally, yeah.
So this is a way of Larry kind of acknowledging that they thought they knew where the base was, and then, oh no, it wasn't there at all. So okay, fine, he's free and clear to not pursue that line again. But and then on the last page you do get actually this cliffhanger of some woman goes to the language center in San Francisco, which is actually a secret Joe base, and pulls a gun on Jinx, claiming she is Billy's mother.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. Continued next issue, but because that kind of one page doesn't tie into the rest of this issue, I'm happy to rate this, as a single story. Yeah, you up for that?
Absolutely. There's always going to be an overarching arc. You can't get away from that.
Exactly. What do you want to give this one then?
I enjoyed it. I liked it. I think it was a nice double kind of story. The subplot was interesting. The introduction of Road Pig's really cool. And I think it was executed really well. I enjoyed the artwork. There's that one panel where the Cobra aspids are just hovering over the remains of the Quonset huts.
Yes.
And the troopers are jumping out onto the deck, and it's just beautiful, that scene.
Who do you reckon that trooper is? There's one there with kind of a yellow backpack and yellow boots and yellow gloves.
I want to say it's a battle android trooper.
Yeah,
I want to say it's a battle android trooper, but I'm not 100% sure on that because you don't really see it. I mean, obviously we've seen a Techno Viper, we've seen Tele Vipers.
It's quite nice to see Cobra troopers because obviously now we're getting into the Viper categories.
Yeah.
And the Vipers seem to have superseded the Cobra Trooper, but it's nice to see some old school troopers there.
Big time, no, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and say, based on all of those factors, I want to give it an 8.
Okay, yep, that sounds about right. I'm going to give it a...
And the reveal at the end's brilliant, sorry.
I think I'm struggling between a low 8 or a high 7. I'm thinking back to last week when we reviewed issue 80, where they're stuck on that island in the Gulf, and I think I gave that an 8, and I'm thinking, would I rather read this again or that issue? I think I'd rather read that issue again, so on that basis I'm giving this a high 7.
Okay, cool.
Now moving on to issue 84 and 85. So looking at the cover for 84, we've got a Cobra Commander being held by the arms by some red ninjas on some pillars with a big Zartan face in front of him.
It's okay. It's not one of the best covers. I mean, there's... I don't know. It's just it doesn't really do a lot for me. And I know that this is reminiscent of what happens in the issue because it's all about illusion-based kind of stuff that Zartan and the Red Ninjas employ on his like hut and everything. But at the same time, I don't know. It's just a little... It's all right.
It's trying to be symbolic, but it's whatever. And then, as it's a two-parter, we'll just look at the cover of issue 5 as well. This is Storm Shadow in his new camo gear, basically loading up his compound bow about to fire.
I would have preferred this more if it was more like his version 2 version, because it's basically just Storm Shadow and they've put the digital camo on him. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like the kind of round head and everything. You kind of need him to be more hoodie in that, for me personally. It's a really nice cover, though. I do like it, and I'll get on to why I really, really love that version of Storm Shadow a bit later on.
Yeah, and this is... So 85 is a silent issue, which I really like as part of this story, but we'll come on to that in a minute. And
Big
84 is more of the history and the background of characters like Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, Zartan, Cobra Commander. It's flashbacks and stuff. So Converging Destinies is the title of issue 84.
Yeah, we start with this really nice image of two Storm Shadows is what you think. You're thinking it's like some sort of, Zen mind state that Storm Shadow is meditating in or something. It actually turns out that Storm Shadow is wearing his new version 2 garb. And as you can see, he's got more of a hood and then a face mask as opposed to the all-over Storm Shadow type mask that he wore originally, as you can see in front of him. And that turns out to be Billy. And what I think is done really well here is obviously Billy wears an eye patch, doesn't he? But the shading and the shadowing that they've done on the drawing means that you don't necessarily pick up on that immediately because of the way it's shaded.
It just looks like his eyebrow and then the shading over the eye, exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of, well, I'll point out now that Marshall Rogers is the penciler here, Randy Emblin's inks, Rick Parker's letters, Bob Shireen's colours. But I think this is probably the best Marshall Rogers art has been in G.I. Joe so far.
Definitely for faces as well. Yeah.
Some of the issues he had during the Cobra Civil War, we both agreed were perhaps not the best. But here, I think it's the best his art has been, so kudos.
I like how again, Larry's explaining the reason for the different version figure. So he's basically said that Storm Shadow's got this new costume because he's given his old duds to Billy, which is, quite a good natural way of doing it.
You see Cobra Commander unmasked here for the first time, don't you, I think?
Yeah, driving his car with his shades on.
Yeah, I suppose he's still got shades and a tash, but that's a first, which I thought was... a lot of masked characters across all comics and stuff, it's not many of them stay masked forever, and I was wondering when I was reading this the first time round, will we ever see Snake Eyes' real face, which we actually will coming up, and have we seen Destro yet? I don't think we have. I think we see him coming up as well
you
soon.
See Destro, but he's like wearing another disguise, but it's not obvious. It's like not covering his whole face, right?
Yeah. And then Cobra Commander, obviously we've seen him here, and it's kind of like, okay, cool. It's sometimes it's nice to do the little reveal without it being a big thing. It's a couple of panels, done, move on. Then back to the mask, which is quite cool.
The reason we see him is because Billy's mom turns up with Jinx in tow as a hostage with a gun to her head. Now Jinx is obviously she knows she felt that the mother wouldn't do Billy any harm, so she's letting this play out rather than just escaping, which I think she's already out of the cuffs anyway. And Storm Shadow kind of hides as they're coming up the stairs. They both know that people are coming. Storm Shadow knows that it's Jinx and she's off balance, so her arms are behind her back, which I love the whole ninja aspect, but sometimes it just goes so crazy. And then obviously he zips out of the way as they come through the door, so it's just Billy in there. The mother doesn't recognise Billy, and she's asking where Billy is, and she's going to kill Jinx if if he doesn't turn up. Storm Shadow jumps to kind of killer effectively from the ceiling, right from the rafters, and Billy realizes who it is and immediately springs to action, stopping the blade from hitting her, kicking the gun out of her hand so Jinx is safe, and then it all turns out that she realizes it's Billy, and it's like, oh my god, and here we go, and that's when we start this kind of flashback kind of scenario, right?
Yeah, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, that the kind of flashbacks we get from Billy's mum and Storm Shadow and Jinx and Billy is Cobra Commander's brother was in Vietnam. I'm just going to Reader's Digest this. He came back and couldn't handle it and was a drunk driver and crashed into another car, which happened to be Snake Eyes' family in the other car. Yeah,
that's correct.
Okay, which was the Snake Eyes going back to issues 26, 27. Storm Shadow would recount that Snake Eyes had a picture of his sister that he always used to carry around as good luck, and she was killed in this car crash caused by Cobra Commander's brother, and Cobra Commander actually blamed Snake Eyes for the death of his brother. Yeah. Well, he blamed the family that was in the other car, and because they all died, he wanted to take revenge on the only living relative, which happened to be Snake Eyes. Have I got that right?
Correct. Absolutely. Correct. I think we get even more details of that crash further along the line as well.
Right. Okay.
So, it's not even finished yet. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Yep. And we also get this Zartan pops in as well. And so obviously we recall back to that 26-27 when someone killed the Hardmaster with one of Storm Shadow's arrows, and it actually turned out that the assassin was aiming for Snake Eyes, but the Hardmaster had done the Cloak of the Chameleon to pretend to be Snake Eyes.
Mimicking the heartbeat. And now that is finally revealed about why Zartan, because we found out in the back end of the 40s that it was Zartan who was the assassin. We now find out the real reason, behind that, because Cobra Commander hired him from a pool hall. Yeah, also forced him to do it, because Zartan decided against doing it, because he just wanted to be...
Oh, yeah, that's right,
He wanted to be like this swordsmith with on the Onahashi. And then, obviously, when that all kicked off, when Cobra realised he wasn't going to going through with it, because he had already been there for a year or a number of years. He'd been waiting outside for 6 months with bended knee to try and get in the back door, as it were, to get in with the Arashikage or get close to them. And the only way he could do it was... That sword dude,
he made all the Arashikage swords, didn't
he? Yeah, so that was the only way they could do it. And when a picture was taken, when they delivered the sword, Cobra Commander obviously saw him there, realised he hadn't done what he needed to do, and then kind of approached to say, you need to fulfil the contract, or I'm going to reveal who you really are and what you're doing there. And so he was kind of he was pressured, he was blackmailed into doing it.
Yeah, because he'd become effectively a man of honour. He trained under Onahashi to, this kind of samurai way of honour and morality. So
many layers. It's so complex, isn't it?
He turned a corner from kind of like a hitman, a mercenary hitman in a bar, and he'd kind of come full circle and, gone the way of the good. But like you say, blackmailed into then... He didn't want to disgrace his master. His master finding out the truth. So he thought the only way to avoid that is to go ahead with this assassination, and then he can go back to, making swords, etc. But obviously it never worked out that way.
I mean, it's so many layers, very complex. It's not just that they're bad. He's a bad guy doing bad things. There's more to it. And it's quite interesting that he almost redeemed himself, and then he's sucked straight back into it. But again, he doesn't do anything afterwards to try and change anything, so he's just generally fallen into that now.
Interesting bit here, because that Zartan story, that is coming from a conversation between Zartan and Fred Seven.
Yeah.
And that comes about because they've gone to take him out, haven't they? They've gone to his shack. Mindbender seems to be getting around everywhere these days.
He's in every issue.
I like Mindbender because he's a little toady who just wants to... He's out for himself. He's always after the glory. I quite like his silly get-up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they go into the shack. He's changing from a Cobra bunker to the petrol station or the gas station. And this is where the silliness to the extent of Zartan's holographic trickery comes in, I guess. Because
he MC Escher paintings the entire building, doesn't he?
Yeah. They go in and everything's upside down to start with. And also, why are the Red Ninjas there? I don't know that. They're part of the clan.
I'm guessing, well, the Red Ninjas, I don't know why. I suppose because Zartan has that connection with the Arashikage, so he, and because he's gone rogue, he's in with the Red Ninjas, I suppose.
Yeah. And I thought about this bit when he finally, he's upside down walking and suddenly he falls. So I don't know. Maybe he was on a ledge or something, and then suddenly they flipped everything round. I guess it's all just sort of twisted, and Zartan's sitting on a throne of skulls, which I was like, where'd he get that from? And then I thought, oh no, it's probably actually a hologram.
Yeah, it's probably all just bull. Yeah, they're probably just in a room. It's probably like the Danger Room in X-Men.
Yeah, there's a cool bit where one of the Red Ninjas pulls his helmet off, and he goes, "No, the anti-tamper device, it's plus explosives." And Zartan explains that he had all those explosives in the helmet disarmed months ago. So he's been biding his time waiting. And this is where he then tells Fred Seven about how he met the first Cobra Commander and his contract, etc.
Yeah.
And a lot of times exposition in comics can feel a little bit forced or, hackneyed, but the way they've set it up here, it feels like, okay, yeah, this is how it might play out if, this backstory is being told. It doesn't feel like it's exposition for the sake of it.
No, but
it's just trying to be crammed in.
At the time, it was like explaining a lot of small details that you weren't aware of. It's difficult when you're reading it back after you've read it multiple times already to have that. What was that feeling when I first read this? What was my feeling as I was going through this story for the first time? And I know we'd had some of the information doled out, but then there's a couple of bits and pieces in here. You're like, oh, I see. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't feel like you're being forced even more exposition. Totally.
And the bit, it's even got the bit at the end here, which I'd kind of forgotten about, where the reason that Zartan doesn't go, all the way and redeem himself is because when he goes back to the cave where he was living with his master, he finds his master has, committed suicide.
Is it they call
Seppuku, yeah. Because he has found out about, what the shenanigans that Zartan's been going on with, and basically decided he would take his own life because he felt dishonoured. And I think that was the point where Zartan went into the mindset of, okay, fine, I'm not a good guy, I'm never going to be a good guy, I've lost everything's been taken from me, I'm just going to be out for myself from now on.
Yeah. And then it's all tied together by Zartan leaving in a helicopter and telling Cobra Commander, I'm going to fix that for good, I'm going to get Storm Shadow before he can get me.
Yep.
And how you don't even know where he is. He said, I know where he's going to be tomorrow. And he flies away in the helicopter. Cobra Commander is like left standing in this vacant building with no roof on it now because it's just been blown off. Yep. And you've got this kind of like this paper floating about in the corner of the page that says something about a museum is about to show some artifacts. And then that makes even more sense as Billy and his mother go to, kind of get more reacquainted. Jinx and Storm Shadow are chatting, and he says it's pretty amazing how events seem to come full circle, isn't it? And Jinx says it sure is. And then the paperboy goes past and drops the same paper with De Jong Museum to show artifacts on it. So it's like, so there's going to be some sort of Arashikage artifact, and that's why, that's how Zartan knows that Storm Shadow is going to be there. So that leads us in nicely to this next issue, doesn't it?
Yeah, great finish, really clever with the paper, like you say, being left in both locations, on the page, and you're like, okay, cool, there's going to be a showdown, because, like you say, Zartan assumes that Storm Shadow is not going to stop until, Zartan's 6 feet under. But I think in reality, Storm Shadow probably has let it go now.
Oh,
he's not seeking, the revenge or the justice or anything anymore. He's content with, that's life almost.
Yeah.
But Zartan is of a different mindset that he's going to keep coming for me. I need to get him first. And like you say, that leads into issue 85, which is called SFX.
I love the silent issues. I think they're really, really cool. Like some people I know in the past have felt shortchanged by it, but I think the way Larry does it, the way the first silent interlude, like the original, is such a kind of marvel of storytelling, just visually with panels and all that kind of stuff. It's just an absolute beautiful comic. And it's iconic, and everyone always kind of cites it as their favourite Joe comic. I wouldn't go that far, but at the same time, it's a belter, and it's one that is always so recognisable because it explains so much about Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow in one panel. So it was just great. Now, what I love about this issue, and I love this issue, is that it's the storytelling visually is perfection. At not one point am I looking at a panel trying to work out, what's happened there? Because sometimes in comics you'll look at a panel, you'll see, what's happened there? I don't understand how they've gone from there to then this position, but everything is beautifully paced in this issue.
Yep, agree with all that. And this is actually, I think, Paul Ryan is the artist here, and I think this is the only issue he does of G.I. Joe. But
it's a shame because it's bloody brilliant.
It's quite a bold decision to have an artist who wasn't going to be a regular on the book do such a kind of pivotal, important issue. Randy Emmeline's on inks, Rick Parker's on letters, Bob Sheen's on colours, but he does a fantastic job, like you say.
And there's real intricacies to the story, because obviously you've got Jinx coming to the museum, and it's all about like sound effects, so you can hear her heels as she's walking through the kind of the hard floor, click, 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 and that kind of continues. You
know that samurai dude is going to come to life, don't you? Even
Totally.
Even on page one.
Totally.
Yeah.
And obviously she goes in and she sees the ninja toe of the Arashikage clan. It's the sword. It's kind of there. It's got the symbol on it. She sees it. She looks at her arm. She's got the tattoo on there as well. She envisions Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow with the same tattoos as well in her head. And then she's just like, "Oh my god!" And you can see like she staggers backwards, like it's the sword. So then she walks over to the phone booth. There's an old man in there with a flat cap and a grey beard. Suspect. And obviously, it's not. We know who that is. And you can see that the wires are going into her phone that she's using, because he's using the other phone booth that's there. Now there are other phone booths, so it's surprising that she picked that one, but that's how it's happened. And he's got it, like, you can see the wires going into that phone booth, and he's got this it's like a mini laptop behind his paper, and that is actually giving him the information of the number she's dialing so that he can locate Storm Shadow, who is obviously at the martial arts academy. I
like that scene that panel where he does the neck chop, kind of motion, as if to say, that's it, go for it, take him out,
take her out, because he's gesturing towards the hidden Cobra operatives, right? The Red Ninjas, sorry.
Red Ninjas, who have been dressed in this samurai garb and been standing stone statues still inside these glass cases.
And then you hear the crash, the smash. He drops the phone. He picks it up as he hears her screaming in the crash and all that kind of stuff. So he knows then. And I don't think she's screaming. She's not screaming in terror. She's screaming to alert him. And then that alerts him to do what, to get ready for what is obviously going to be, that they're coming for him. So you see this beautifully choreographed fight scene where she rolls out of the way of them trying to attack her with the long knives on sticks. Apologies for not knowing the name of that weapon. I should have done my research. She rolls underneath the ninja toe of Arashikage's sword and then busts through the bottom of it and the glass to then hold it in her hands. And I love that scene. I think that's so cool.
It's great. It's great, and they're subtly kind of taken aback a little bit. They weren't expecting it, and they're like, "Oh boy, we've got a fight on our hands now."
And because it's Jinx and she's awesome. And then obviously you see the a helicopter waiting for Zartan, who it turns out to be. It's not an old man with a grey beard. The Red Ninjas are on the roof waiting for him. He starts to phase back into what he normally looks like. They take off, and then you see on his laptop, you see the address of the number that he managed to tap into when she made the phone call, and they fly off to go, attack Storm Shadow.
Was that his plan all along? His plan was entice someone of the Arashikage clan to the museum, and then he knew they would place a phone call to Storm Shadow that he could trace.
That's the ingenious idea, yes.
Unless Storm Shadow turned up at the museum and he could just take him out there and then.
Obviously, that would have been that. This would have been a contingency, I suppose, that turned out to be the plan that they needed to go with, because Storm Shadow wasn't the one that went there. Yeah, and then obviously we see Jinx take their guys out easily, cuts into all three of them in 3 panels. Below that, all of their clothes fall off and they're dead Red Ninjas. And then as all of the guards come in and you got the alarm going off as well, she whips the sword into its scabbard and then runs out, jumps on a motorbike and tries to hoss back to Storm Shadow. Now he is already in his version 2 garb, ready to defend the martial arts center, and lo and behold, and I just love the visuals of the helicopter whoop, 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 coming around and everything. It's just so beautiful.
They're kind of attacking on multiple fronts here, so a load of them are dropped onto the rooftop, and then a few of them are scaling down with climbing apparatus down the side of the windows. Some have come in, where's that? Oh, that's from the rooftop coming down the door. And it's just like, how's he going to get out of this? And of course he's got a compound bow, which we haven't seen from him before, I don't think.
No, this is because this
Storm
is the
Shadow,
new version.
That is.
Yeah, this is the new one he came with. Yep.
Right.
And it's just amazing how he just takes. I love the sequence then of them crashing through the windows, the helicopter pilot getting killed by Storm Shadow. He's takes out one of the main threats first. Then he has to deal with the 2 guys that are shooting at him. He gets rid of those guys easily. Then there's another guy outside. He hears the ka-chunk of the Uzi that he's about to use, throws his sword from distance, and it goes through the fire door and kills the guy on the other side. And it's just amazing. All of the visuals are I can't get enough of this comic. I think this is one of my favourite comics of Joe. And then with the helicopter crashing on the street below, but it opens the front and you can see a van just slowly emerging in that panel. So it's very subtle.
I wish Zartan had come with several different vehicles, one being this VW camper and one being the bus that he drove inside one of these aspids before.
Yeah.
2 vehicles that he's had to drive inside this aspid, and
he's always got a backup plan, Zartan, hasn't he?
Yeah, I wish someone would do a custom. There's anyone out there who's listening who does customs or knows people that do customs. Can they do a Zartan VW camper and then post it online so I can look at it?
Report back to us.
Report back.
And obviously, yeah, there is a van coming out of it. It's Zartan. That's where he is, and he's got his bow and arrow. Obviously, Storm Shadow rushes to get his sword back, pulls it out, looks at the open door, looks at the door behind him because it's opened. Again, this is like the beauty of each kind of subtle maneuver in each panel, because on the first panel the door's closed, the second panel it's open, so he knows someone's coming to the door. The lights are still out, obviously. Zartan's putting his headphones on, and he's trying to do the mimic heartbeat type thing with his bow on the top of his van. The red ninjas walk in and trip over the dead bodies that are already in there, one of which is hiding Storm Shadow.
Yeah, because if you look closely here, the red ninjas all have something strapped to their chests, and this is, I guess, identifiers for Zartan.
Yeah.
So he knows where all his guys are, and anyone who is not emitting one of these beeps or pings, he knows will be Storm Shadow. So
Storm Shadow yoinks one, doesn't he, as he fights with another dude?
Yep.
And again, the fight sequences are gorgeous. And you can see him. He grabs it on his chest and just kicks him away to the edge of the window, and that's where the red ninja's like, oh no, as he's touching his chest, like, oh my god. And that's when Zartan unleashes his arrow, takes out the guy at the window, and it's red ninja, and then it's like, so Zartan escapes. You see Jinx turn up, and then another beautiful panel of Storm Shadow flipping out of the top window onto the roof of a car, and then hopping onto the back of Jinx's bike. It's like, it would have been a little bit ridiculous him jumping straight out onto his balls onto the bike seat. So this is like a little bit cooler, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very filmic, this issue. I can imagine this as a scene from a movie or a TV show. It's really, really dynamic storytelling, and like you've mentioned a couple of times, the way it flows together and the panel sequences and the ability to tell a really coherent story without any dialogue is a fantastic skill. And hats off to Paul Ryan here, he's done a fantastic job.
Great job. And then obviously you've got the chase begins on bike and camper van. They're both aiming at each other with their bows, but Zartan gets his shot off first and kind of damages all of the arrows that Storm Shadow has. So with one shot, which is amazing. They're getting to the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. He fires another arrow, Zartan, and this is genius. I love this. Storm Shadow grabs it in mid-flight, flips it round, and uses it against him. Fires it through the back window and takes out the driver. Yeah. And that, in turn, has the camper van go straight off the side of the bridge and into the drink. And it's like, that's it. That's the end. And it's so just absolutely stunning. This is by far and away my favourite of the silent issues by far, and is one of my favourite Joe comics of all time.
Cool, high praise indeed.
I'm giving this a 10 before you even ask me, mate.
Wowzers. Okay, 10 from Chris.
It has
ticked.
And
that is bearing in mind we're ranking this as a two-parter, yeah? Or did you want to do 84 and 85 separately? Do you think they're separate enough to rank them separately?
If we're doing it as a two-parter, I'm going to go and take it down to 9, but only because this second issue brings it up so much. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
So I'm happy to do either. It just falls into the what category it falls into. So if we're ranking
think it should be separate.
G.I. Joe story arcs, is it 2 separate stories or is it one story? I'm happy to do it as separate or do it as together, whatever you feel is best.
I mean, where do you end? Because I mean, it's not a definitive two-parter because it's not written. This is one story and this is the same story part 2. So for me, I would say do them separately because they just have connective tissue like all of the comics do. So I think it's difficult, and where do you draw the line it's probably up to us anyway. So whatever you want to do, mate, I'm going to go whatever you want to do. Personally, I think they should be separate.
Fine, perfect with me. So you're going to give 85, you're going to give it 10?
Absolutely, 100%.
And what are you giving 84?
It was an interesting issue. It's got a lot of cool exposition and some good reveals. It's 7 for me.
So 7 there. I think I'm going to give 84. I'm going to give an 8.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at the top of my chart to see what I've got up there. What 9s have I got? I've got the Snake Eyes Origin. I gave a 9. Issues 42 and 43, which is the Ties That Bind and Crossroads. I gave a 9. I actually gave Serpentor's introduction a 9. I think you're right. I think I'm going to give this a 9 as well.
Cool.
Well, no, you're not. No, not that you're right, because you gave it a 10. I'm giving it a 9. You're giving it a 10.
I'm just so excited because this is one of those just amazing issues, and the fight sequences are beautiful. The art is on point. Everything is so meticulously done. Like, everything bleeds into each other. You know, each panel is really important. Each panel, not just each page. Each panel is super important, and it's just it leads this. It's just great to read, to move through. The pace is fantastic, and it's just, I could go over and over and over this comic so many times and never get bored with it.
Yep, good stuff. Right, coming out of reading Joe Comics, there's only one thing we can do, and that's we now have to talk about toys. So it's time for Chris Talks Toys.
Chris Talks Toys. Dun dun dun. Okay, so obviously all of this hyperbole over Storm Shadow version 2, and I should say version 3 in the UK. Because he was released twice prior to this. Same figure, but one was a Palatoy card and one was a Action Force card. So, an Action Force Cobra, I should say. Now, version 2, Storm Shadow, that's who we're talking about today. And again, I'm going to bring up the trip to the United States when I was a youngster, 8 years old, in 89. And basically, this Storm Shadow figure was on the shelves. Now, I hadn't been keeping up with the Marvel comic, obviously, in the US because I couldn't. I'd known Storm Shadow through the stories in the Action Force comics and thought he was a bad guy the whole time. There was obviously the backstory was more complex and that was starting to come through, but in general, in the Action Force comics, Storm Shadow was a bad guy. And when I go into the aisle and I pick this Storm Shadow figure off the card, and it didn't really dawn on me until I turned it round and saw that the Storm Shadow bio card had G.I. Joe underneath it as opposed to Cobra. And I was like, what? Storm Shadow's a good guy? So I read the bio, and I'll read the bio out now on, while we are recording. And it says, Storm Shadow served with Snake Eyes in Southeast Asia, and both of them later studied the secret arts of ninjutsu with Storm Shadow's family, a ninja clan that could trace its history back through 30 generations of assassins. Unhinged by the murder of his uncle and mentor, he infiltrated Cobra seeking revenge, but found vengeance to be a poor substitute for life. Now in semi-retirement at a remote mountain hideaway, he occasionally takes on a special mission or two if Snake Eyes asks him nicely. So I read that and I'm like, wow. So now I'm thinking, there's a lot of info in there that is being left out. How is he G.I. Joe all of a sudden after being so a bad guy all this time? So there was a huge confusion in my head. And obviously I had the American carded version before I even, I didn't get the G.I. Joe G.I. Joe the Action Force carded Storm Shadow version we got in the UK. The bio cards are exactly the same. There's only one difference, and that's a spelling difference. So I get really kind of geeky with the cards. And we would often change, spellings, because obviously the American spellings, and in this one, it's Conjurer. So Conjurer is with an O at the end for the US and an E at the end for us in the UK. Okay. So very minor change, but everything else is exactly the same, more or less, apart from he had G.I. Joe under him on the US card and G.I. Joe the Action Force under him for the UK card. So yes, he's still a good guy in both versions. And I was just blown away by this. And for one thing, looking at the figure, right, it's beautiful. The update is just one of the best updated versions of a character of all time. So you go from this really cool, sleek, white ninja to what is effectively a much better head sculpt, in my opinion. I think the head sculpt on the original figure is a little bit kind of goofy. It's a little bit kind of the shape of the head's a little bit funny to me. it looks a bit weird. But this one is spot on because they've kind of padded out the hood a little bit. So you've got this hood over his mask, and the digital camo was just so striking. It was just this dark grey Tetris pieces all over the white, the classic white Storm Shadow. So it's still Storm Shadow because he's still in his all white, but you've got this beautiful deco. The additional sculpted kind of rope that goes across his chest as well, the sculpted pouches along the bottom of his waist, the shorter sleeves, which have been sculpted as well to kind of like they're a bit looser. And the one thing I have to mention on this is the tattoo on his right arm, the ARAH symbol, is out there on show in red. So it's like they're playing up the ARAH element in the comics. They've put it on the figure, and all of a sudden, like, it just opened up these questions for me. Like, I'm just like, what the hell is this? Like, oh my God, there's a tattoo on his arm. And like, it was just, as a kid, like, this stuff is mind-blowing on an action figure. When you've got these like little tampos and stuff on there, it just blows my mind. On top of that, his accessory loadout is just amazing. Bright red backpack with kind of 3 prongs on the one side, so you can slide the bright red sword in there, so he can carry his sword on his backpack. So again, massive props to the toy designers for being able to give him the accessories and he can carry everything. The other amazing things he came with, obviously the compound bow, which was the first time we'd seen him with that. And it was like, oh my God, this is again really cool compound bow. It doesn't work, but it's like it's enough detail in there to make it look really cool. And the other thing, which was the 3-pronged Wolverine claw, which clips to the beautifully the way they've sculpted the arms with that lower sleeve kind of looping round, means that the claw could lock in really nicely in the space on both wrists. So he can basically hold all of his equipment like all together at once. So for me, like the figure itself was just mind blowing. But then on top of that, the card art is again just some of the most beautiful card art of all time on a G.I. Joe figure, because one, he's pulling this really cool pose. Like he's kind of twisted around, so he's like standing side on, but then he's turned his body to face you almost, and he's pulling back on the compound bow. The tattoo is there, like on show, like really clear. They've even, like his big, like saggy wizard sleeve kind of scenarios going on. The camo looks gorgeous. Everything about this toy carded figure is just beautiful. And then obviously later on in the day, I discover the comic, and that's where I see, oh, this is why this is happening. And he's got this new gear and this new get-up. And yeah, one of my all-time favourite G.I. Joe figures. They've done it in the modern era. They've done this figure, like they've homaged it in the Rise of Cobra movie line. They've done it in the Sideshow kind of 12-inch scale, which is gorgeous, and I have that too. They didn't go with the digital camo on that figure. They went with kind of like a more scratchy kind of camo, but again, it's still beautiful and one of my favourite of my Storm Shadow collectibles. I've got nothing but praise for this original version. It's one of my favourite figures of all time, and I love him, love him, love him.
Good stuff, good stuff. We'll stick up some pictures up on the socials so people can be reminded how cool that is. We have got a special treat for listeners right now, because we have got our 4th annual, maybe, don't know. Anyway, it's our 4th awards show, where we will be covering several categories from the comic for 1987 and 1988. That is issues 55 through 81. So we have our first guest presenter. No, we don't have any guest presenters. Quinton, I'll come and see you later. Oi, security, get those dreadnoughts out of here right now. Great, they can smell the grape soda. Get them out. Hi, Brad. How you doing? Nice to see you. So the first category we will be covering is Best Cover from 1987 to 1988. So a lot of good ones to choose from here. I was struggling a little bit, but I narrowed it down to, I have a honourable mention, and that is going to be issue 63, which is Snake Eyes and Scarlet going through the minefield. Yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah,
that is, I think that's a Michael Golden cover. Danger Minefield. They've got their weapons, and I like the way that Snake Eyes' left arm is kind of, his hand is out, kind of just
Yeah.
Sensing.
Wary. Yeah.
Be careful motion. Good one, that. 75 is probably the most iconic, which is the one where Baroness is strapped onto the front of the hiss.
Yeah.
But I haven't actually gone for that one. My runner-up is issue 54.
Okay.
Which is Flint parachuting in. There's a fire bat in the background which is shooting at him.
Another good
Cobra
one.
Terradrome on the ground, and actually the Conquest is going down in the background. Really like that one. But my top choice and the winner is issue 74 cover. And that is it's kind of a dynamic action sequence. You've got Serpentor being strangled by Fred 7 in the foreground, Baroness kind of with a gun looking a bit worried, and then Hawk is face palming Destro, who has got a sword out and is grappling with Hawk.
Awesome.
What about yourself, sir? Where were you slinging the awards?
I only picked one because I didn't go for the honourable mentions. I was unaware of all the extras, and I didn't use my initiative to do so. But I do agree with a lot of your choices there. I think there's some absolute belters. But my one, and amazingly, I thought you were going to say it, and I was like, oh, please don't say it. It's issue 61, and it's Beginnings and Endings, the story. And it's on the cover, it's Stalker, Snowjob, and Quick Kick, and they're basically in like the gulag. They've got the light on them, the spotlight on them. They're being shot at, and they're returning fire. Quick Kick's injured, and there's like all of the the shots kind of raining down on them. And I mean, just for me, it's really dynamic. It's really powerful. It's really action packed, and there's a lot of like I'm worried about. Is Quick Kick okay? Like, oh my god. So there's a lot going on, and there's that subtle element in the top left hand corner behind the Marvel sign and behind the G.I. Joe logo, and it's the
barbed wire,
the barbed wire fence. Yeah, the top of that, and the blue, kind of like almost like evening sky, and then the black of the walls that they're kind of stuck behind. And I just think it's just a very beautiful, well done, and very, very action-packed cover.
Sounds good. Where do you want to go next? Just to let people know, the other categories we've got are Best Artist, Best Joe, Best Issue, and Best Vehicle.
We'll do that way. Best Artist next, yep.
Okay, so the bulk of the issues here are done by either Rod Wiggum or Ron Wagner. There's a couple done by Tony Salmons, and there's some done by Marshall Rogers as well. So you can go first here, my friend.
For me, actually, it's a funny one because it's really just down to, not down to do the fact, but I've met the guy, and that's Ron Wagner. I really like his style. I think it's really, really kind of just awesome. And I think when he is inked and coloured well, it's some of the best art that kind of going. So I'd have to say Ron Wagner for me on that one. And again, meeting him in person, he's lovely, he's really cool, and hopefully I'll get to meet him again in November for Assembly Required.
Excellent. Yep, I'm going to actually agree with you there. I voted Rod Wiggum for the previous awards. He's possibly my favourite Joe artist, but here for this run, like you, when he's inked and coloured well, Wagner, I think it was a good choice of Marvel because they didn't choose an artist to follow Wiggum who was wholeheartedly different.
Yeah.
It's a similar-ish style, but there's clearly enough of a difference that you can differentiate between the two, and I think he did some really, really strong issues here, all the way from towards the beginning of this run of issues all the way through to Cobra Civil War, and did a bang-on job, so Ron Wagner for me as well.
Awesome.
Next, we're going to favourite Joe from this era. And Dusty was on the short list, but he's only got, I think, one or possibly two issues of airtime, so he didn't make it. I am going to give my honourable mention to one of my favourite Joes of all time, which is Stalker.
Nice.
I am going to give my runner-up to Outback, who crops up in issue 59, which is a cool issue where he's kind of... that's where Tunner and the other guys are going cross-country, and he's been out in the woods or the forest living off. No, he chucked away all his regulation equipment because he said it was rubbish and was breaking, and just lived off the land. And then obviously he plays a big role in that Barovia storyline.
Massive.
But my favourite Joe from this period is actually Flint.
Oh, nice.
And he's got that issue in 54 where it's not actually him, it's Snake Eyes who gets parachuted in under the guise of being Flint.
Yeah.
But he, plays a role in that storyline, and then he's kind of with Scarlet and Snake Eyes on the beach where they fake their own death, and he gets punched out later by Lady J, which I thought was a bit, I thought that was a bit out of character, not out of character for her, but a bit of out of order for her punching him. But yeah, Flint for me on the winner for favourite Joe.
Oh, cool. For me, Outback, you mentioned him, and I just think he was so pivotal in the Barovia story, and like had to go through quite a lot with the other Joes, especially not knowing the full extent of what had happened in Barovia. So for him to go through that and be as like solid as a rock as he was, I just thought was really cool. And then when they all like return, and then it's that kind of really emotional moment and everything. But in any case, it's Outback for me because he's a brilliant character anyway, and I just really liked how he was done in the comics, and especially that run. So yeah, for me it's Outback.
Okay, I'm going to flip-flop these two, so we leave Issue as the final award, because that's probably one of the biggies. So let's do Best Vehicle from this period. And I didn't actually state this when I told you with such short notice last week of this category. It's actually vehicles that were introduced during this run.
Oh,
so I don't know if that affects your choice.
Possibly.
But for this awards only, I'm vetoing that and saying it's any vehicle.
Oh, okay, cool.
That appears in these issues. So go ahead. What's your favourite vehicle from these issues then?
Mine was the Cobra Mamba.
Yep, that's. I'm taking that. That's absolutely fine.
Because it's just an incredible piece of work, and the fact that it's got two lots of blooming, helicopter blades, and they don't touch each other when they're. I just think it's brilliant.
It's got some cool bits, especially when the Joes are going to Cobra Island and they're all crammed in
the pods. Yeah, it's just really. For me, it's an iconic vehicle for the Cobra, and they use it so often. It's always like, when you've got an Aspid, you've got like two Mambas. That seems to be the ratio of helicopters for Cobra, and it's just a beauty. How about yourself?
So vehicle, this was a tough one. I've got two honourable mention runner-ups, and they're purely based on. They're only in a couple of issues each. And it's purely from a visual standpoint, and that is the Cobra Wolf.
Nice.
Which is that called? That's what the Ice Viper drives, yeah.
Yeah.
And because that's in the Frusian Land two-part, which I think is issue 67 and 68.
Awesome vehicle.
And we see that. I never had any of these vehicles I'm about to mention, so
I had
my only reference point for them is the comics. But it just looked really cool, and was it a good vehicle as well? Then?
Amazing. So many little features, cool little cockpits, two little kind of cockpit windows. Yeah, really, really awesome.
Yeah, that's probably my runner-up. My honourable mention was the Demon.
Oh, nice.
Which, again, I've never seen in real life, only experienced in the comic, and it kind of cropped up for a few issues in that Cobra Civil War when Destro rolls him down the beach.
Yeah.
But my favourite is the X-30 Conquest.
Ooh.
Because that has quite a few good issues. It also crops up in that Special Missions we read.
Yeah.
But, I kind of like that dynamic. If they had the Sky Striker was the kind of air superiority aircraft for the Joes for so long, it was nice to kind of get a second fighter plane to go alongside that.
I forget the real life. It's basically this prototype plane that they made that was the real life kind of inspiration for Guy Cassaday, who designed the X-30 Conquest. Another lovely guy. I've had him interviewed on the show before, but he's also quite a good friend of mine now. He's really like a Hasbro legend. He designed the Rolling Thunder, the 6-wheel drive Desert Fox, the Persuader. He even got his name on the Persuader, but I think it says, if you look at it's like a sticker that goes on like the front panels at the front of the Persuader. It says it's like CA55 or whatever, but it's like Cassaday. In like numbers and letters, so you managed to sneak that one in there. But nice. As you say, the X-30 Conquest. He actually, when I met him for the first time face to face at HasCon, he basically gave me his signature. He signed this. It was just a bit of paper, but he wrote his because he was giving me his number and details for doing the show. And so he wrote down this bit of paper, but then drew, sketched out the X-30 Conquest above it, and gave me that as for his contact details. And I'm like, dude, that's amazing. So I've basically got that. I haven't got it framed, but I'll take a picture of it and send it up for Twitter. Do. Yeah, it's a beauty.
Good stuff.
And I'll blur out his contact information.
Cool. Right, so rounding out then, let's go for favourite issue from this run. I couldn't split between honourable mentions and runners-up, so I'm actually going to give you 3. I've got issue 80, which is one we read last week, which was in the Gulf, that island popping up, really like that. Issue 65, which is where it's an interlude in the Barovia storyline. It's where Cobras go up into space, Baroness and Fred 7, and it's the first issue where all is going wrong around him. The Baroness has been knocked unconscious, and suddenly Fred 7 has to kick into gear and proves to be a leader of men.
Yeah.
And I really, really like the dynamic and the way that's done. And issue 55 is Unmaskings. It's where the pit has gone down, and it's where Destro and Cobra Commander, the original, have to escape and basically get doled up in some funky gear, and it's where Cobra Commander decides he's going to forget about... he realises his son's still alive, and he's thinking about forgetting a life of crime.
Yeah.
But my winner is issue 73, is my favourite issue. So it's the first issue of the Cobra Civil War storyline. It's the one... So the prologue is 72, where the Star Viper infiltrates the pit, etc.
Yeah,
and then 73 is where it all kicks off, and where the team's first... Joe's gets sent to the island. You get a lot of sneak peek, and it's where all the teams get broken up, and you get the roll calls. And within 3 pages, Cobra Commander, Fred 7 and Serpentor are at each other's throats. They've separated the teams or the lines of Cobra. You get the map and all that kind of stuff. It's just a hell for leather. Start to finish, fantastic cracking issue that makes you want to carry on reading the whole storyline.
Oh, totally. It's a belter. For me, actually, it's close to that. It's 75, and it's the holding actions issue. And for one, it's the one with Serpentor and the Baroness on the front cover is on the Hiss tank, and she's tied to it. For one, it's the nostalgia connection is pretty strong here, because obviously that was the holiday special that I had in the UK that we got randomly, and none of the rest of it.
Yeah.
But the story, like the art, everything about it is just is really solid. And even though General Hawk changes costumes magically, I wasn't aware of that situation at the time. So for me, it's just one of those issues. It's always going to be high on a pedestal, because it's one of the few G.I. Joe stories that I was kind of open to, knew of at the time, and absolutely bloody love it. So yeah, that's for me.
Good stuff. Thanks everyone for attending in the crowd. We appreciate you. Will be at the after party later. Zarana, I've got my eye on you.
Road Pig, I've got my eye on you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm eyes in the back of my head looking out for that clown. Well, he's not a clown. He's a good guy. You're a good guy, Road Pig. I don't want to get Donald's
a good guy. Yeah.
Yes, we will do another awards show covering 1989 and 1990 in a few weeks' time, and I'll be sure to brief Chris well ahead of schedule and not just spring it on him at the last minute. Before we do close out the show, we've gone a bit long today, but that's fine, because we had a lot to cover and it's been good fun. There is some business we have to take care of, and that revolves around...
Chief asked Chris a question.
Boop, boop.
Chief asked Chris a question.
Boop, boop.
What'll he say?
Boop.
What'll he do when Chief asked Chris a question?
So last week, prior to the show, I bought some chips from the local fish and chip shop. So on my way home today, I decided I'm going to do it again. It's going to be my new thing. Prior to recording the pod, I'm going to eat some chips. Now, with my chips and with most meals I eat, I'm a big fan of condiments.
Yeah.
Now, if you know the Chief, you know I like condiments. Now, that can range from, I'm a big fan of, on the chips, I like a lot of vinegar, salt, maybe some cracked black pepper, but condiments also ranging into the sauces.
Yeah.
So, if you are going to have to pick 2 of your favourite condiments, what would they be?
I'm not sure if you'll hate me for this afterwards, but when I have my chips...
You're going to say...
I'll give you a preface.
You're going to say ketchup and mustard.
No, neither of those 2. Okay, so when I have chips...
I'm going to interrupt you even yet again and say this is not limited to just having chips. This is condiments in general eating.
But I just want to preface this about chips. So with my chips, I don't
want to... No, I'm joking.
Okay, so with my chips, I don't have salt and vinegar. I usually have them completely, untouched, because I'll dip them in sauce, and that's where that's where I'll get my fun, my jive. Now, my favourite all-time condiment is curry sauce.
Okay.
But I also enjoy honey mustard and mayonnaise. So any of those 3 I will have with my chips and be a very happy man. Or in condiments in general, curry sauce is amazing.
Yeah. there you go.
So I'm not. Do you hate me or not after that?
No, not at all. That's a fair shout. And in fact, in honour of you, sir, next week when I get my chips, I'm going to get a portion of curry sauce from the chip shop.
Brilliant. I'm glad I could be an influence.
Because I haven't had chip shop curry sauce for a long time. So, that's actually a bit weird because when I went into the chip shop and ordered regular chips, £2 sterling, another woman was there. And she had come in to collect an order, and the guy was recounting to her over the counter what she'd ordered. So he was like, so that was 3 large cods, 3 large chips, and a battered sausage. And she actually said, "Oh yes, and I'd like 3 pots of curry sauce, please." So that actually happened to me about 2 hours ago. So it's all
amazing.
Serendipitous that it's fate that I get this curry sauce for my chips next week.
Amazing. 3 lots of it.
Yeah. But yeah, there we go. And I'll have another question for Chris next week. And I will not give him any prior warning to what it might be, as always.
We should change it to Chris mundanely answers Chief's question.
No, I'm fascinated by, I don't want to make it all Joe related, the whole show, and I'm a big condiments fan. I like to know what other condiments people eat. So people out there, stick it up on the Twitter, on the Instagram, tell us what are your favourite condiments. And that reminds me, yet again, I have failed because I said last week I wanted to do shout outs, but I'd forgotten to accrue all the information, and I've forgotten yet again. So I'm going to write a note now. I'm going to get my pen here. Chief, pull finger out and write list of
I think you were saying sniff it.
Right, list of shout-outs for next week. So they might be a bit old. They might be 3 weeks old when I do these shout-outs, but you're going to get them next week. And when you do join us next week, if you want to do your homework, then we will be recapping, Real American Hero issues 86, 87, 88, and Special Missions 16. So if you want to read along, read those. If you don't, we'll be describing them for you anyway, so no worries. And with that said, you can catch us in all the usual places: Talking_Joe on Twitter, Talking Joe Comics on Instagram, TalkingJoeComics@gmail.com, and Talking Joe, a G.I. Joe podcast on Facebook. Where can the good people find you, sir, if they want to get in touch?
Oh, nowhere. I've cancelled all my accounts. Diagnostic80, that's DIAGNOSTIK80. Don't worry, it's the German spelling. I'm not being all street. And basically, yes, that's Instagram. It's other things, Twitter. But also, Full Force podcast can be found on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Just type in the Full Force podcast or the Full Force, and I'm sure you'll find us. You should recognise the logo. It's very similar to the Action Force one, but don't tell anyone that owns the IP, like Hasbro. Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. So with that said, we will catch you down the road.
Bye!